We got a fresh off the press Karl Jobst response.
On the 1st of April, I
Oh boy.
lost my lawsuit against Billy Mitchell.
Oh,
and
no.
the judge has ordered me to pay $350,000 in damages, plus interest. It goes without saying this is not the result I wanted or expected, and it's honestly quite shocking. Personally, I disagree with the judge's decision, and so I'm currently exploring any potential avenues for appeal. An appeal may stay the judgment on application until the appeal has concluded, which might result in several outcomes. The appeal could be dismissed and I would be ordered to pay the original judgment. The judgment amount may be lowered if the court finds it excessive, or the judgment may be overturned completely if the court finds errors of law have been made. This entire process can take up to a year or longer, so as it stands, this remains an ongoing battle, and it's not a battle I hope to give up easily. This has been very upsetting, but truthfully, losing a court case isn't the end of the world, even if it is to Billy Mitchell. It sucks, it's not what I wanted, I know it's not what many others wanted, but life will go on. Unfortunately for me, something else has happened that has been far more upsetting, and far more difficult to deal with. Many people are upset and angry with me as they believe I have misled them and lied to them about the nature of the lawsuit. Some even go as far as saying that I intentionally lied to the public to scam people out of their money through my GoFundMe.
Ooh.
Mostly, people are upset because they believed the trial was about me accusing Billy Mitchell of cheating, but it turned out to be something else. The backlash has been pretty brutal, and it's not something I'd like to happen again, so I think it's very important for me to be as honest and transparent as I possibly can. I'm going to go through the entire timeline as it happened so that you have as much information as possible. At certain points, I'm going to have to combat things that people have said about me that aren't true, but that doesn't mean
Are there any other games you're looking forward to trying? No! This game is gonna suck too much of my time away, but it's a good break from all the crazy dramatic shit going on, so that's good. By the time I finish this up, we'll be back in full swing, like going on to shows and shit mode.
didn't also make mistakes, and that there also aren't valid criticisms. I hope to address criticisms that I think are wrong, and those that I think are right. And I apologize about the generic Minecraft footage, but I just don't do well on camera. So this will have to do. On the 26th of May, 2021, I released a video titled, "The Biggest Con Men in Video Game History Strike Again." In that video, I discussed 2 new lawsuits that have been filed by Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell. At the end of the video, I outlined all of the various lawsuits Billy Mitchell had filed against others. And when I came around to Billy's lawsuit against the YouTuber Apollo Legend, I said these words. He also sued YouTuber Apollo Legend for $1 million. I haven't spoken about this publicly, but this lawsuit ultimately ended with Apollo giving in and settling with Mitchell. He was forced to remove all of his videos about Mitchell's cheating and paid him a large sum of money. This left him deeply in debt, which required him to find extra work. But with his ongoing health issues, this was all too much of a burden, and he ultimately took his own life. Not that Billy Mitchell would ever care, though. In fact, when Billy Mitchell thought Apollo died earlier, he expressed joy at the thought. The lawsuit against Apollo was just as frivolous as the rest, and Apollo definitely would have won in court, but again, he was extremely ill and couldn't handle the ongoing stress. This was inaccurate because the settlement terms did not involve Apollo Legend paying Billy any money. Even though this claim did turn out to be false, I believed it to be true at the time. I had been personally told there was a cash settlement, which numerous others said they were told as well, and this was also stated by multiple Reddit users, with one of them even claiming to have spoken with Apollo directly.
One thing I would be careful about, I've mentioned this on stream before multiple times, I can't speak to Australian law because I'm not an expert in every single thing in the world, but different countries treat defamation stuff differently. In some countries, merely believing that you were being correct, well, I'll say some countries in the United States, having a good reason or having any reason at all to think you're right will protect you from a defamation lawsuit against a public figure. But in other countries, you have to actually be correct in the things that you're saying. I know in Bongerland it's like that, and apparently in Australia it's like that. So just because somebody says a thing doesn't mean you can believe it's true and then start reporting on it.
Obviously, a Reddit post isn't usually very credible, but this person made these comments and was talking about the settlement before the settlement was even public, which implied to me that they knew what they were talking about and it was trustworthy. And the idea that Apollo Legend may have paid Billy Mitchell a large sum of money was already out in the public. In a 2020 EasyScape video, he said this.
Like I mentioned at the start of the video, there's a good chance that Apollo...
Is it going on show it's going to be a lot harder now that you're pretty much radioactive? No, I don't think so. There's already been people reaching out and stuff. I think it'll be pretty easy.
had to pay Billy a large amount of money in the settlement, and rumors online suggested it to be anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 if this is what happened.
The important distinction, however, is that EasyScape did not claim this as a fact, but rather that it was just a good possibility. And I will need to point out that despite EasyScape thanking me in the description of this video, which people have then used to falsely claim that I went after Apollo Legend in some way, I had absolutely no input on anything he said regarding Apollo Legend, and I had no idea what he was going to say prior to the video's release. I had only simply provided him with some legal documents and information regarding the Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell lawsuits. And EasyScape proactively reached out to me and allowed me to post his statement confirming this was the case. With all of the corroboration corroborating evidence I had, I believed at that time that Apollo Legend did pay Billy Mitchell money in the settlement. And this was not something that I merely fabricated or constructed myself. In Apollo Legend's goodbye video, which I won't replay here out of respect, he confirmed that he had health issues and that he had unpaid debts which he did not want to
How's it out of respect? The guy put out the video before he died, no? I mean, doesn't he expect people to watch it?
pass on to his estate. And he asked people to donate to his GoFundMe because of this. As a fellow YouTuber, I also know how much money Apollo was making on his Billy videos, which was money that he would also stop making due to having to remove these videos from his channel. And of course, you don't need to be sued to realize that being sued is an extremely stressful thing. And especially now after being sued myself, I can only say that you cannot imagine the stress this puts on you until it happens. Apollo himself even admitted this in a Discord message. And I can only assume that the other things he's referring to included his health issues. To be clear though, I never said Billy caused Apollo's suicide, nor have I ever believed that. No one is responsible for Apollo's decision other than Apollo. If you read my words carefully, I simply laid out a sequence of events that happened one after another. I said there was a lawsuit, Apollo settled, he was in debt, though I was incorrect about the cause of the debt, he needed extra work, and he had ongoing health issues. Then I said this was all too much of a burden, and he ultimately took his own life.
Well, I feel like you're glancing over what the subject matter of that lawsuit was over. You said that you weren't just laying out a sequence of events. Like, the implication very clearly was that the Billy Mitchell guy was the reason why he did it, because of a demand for money. And he said, when I was wrong about some things, that was the thing you were wrong about. And that was the thing that the lawsuit was about now. I feel like you lost conservative opportunities after your Corey firefighter take. Do you think that even matters now, considering conservatives are in their fortress arc? I don't know I think maybe immediately after, but I think that would have come about anyway. If I would have gone more nuclear on shows, people would have not invited me. I think the only reason I started getting invited was because people saw me as a way to kind of sane wash the crazy shit they were saying, because they know that, like, well, Destiny's coming, but he's like a pretty nice dude and he'll be chill, so we can like talk to him, and that'll be like, we'll be satisfying our talk to liberals quota. That's my take on it.
I deliberately used words like and but to connect these events. I didn't use words like because or as a result of. I was also very careful to mention Apollo's pre-existing health issues.
Again, you got to be really careful, and I want to be very careful speaking with any level of specificity towards this case, but like, take everything I say with a grain of salt, I guess, because the current U.S. is insane, but generally, you can't be cutesy with stuff like this, where you're like, well, I didn't say that it happened because of him. I didn't say that it was 100% that. I just let out a sequence of events. Like, a judge or a jury is going to see through this and go, well, hold on, we know what you're doing. We're not stupid, right? It's obvious what's going on here, you know?
As a major factor. When I said this was all too much, I was clearly referring to multiple things together. The debt, the extra work, and his health issues, all simply as existing, not as causative factors. I never stated that Mitchell's lawsuit caused or could have caused Apollo's death. Any connection someone might draw between the lawsuit and Apollo's passing goes beyond what I actually said. I was extremely careful, though obviously not careful enough, not to make that claim, because I know the difference between describing a sequence of events and assigning blame for a tragedy. I did, however, get one statement of fact wrong, and trust me, I learned that lesson immediately. Ever since this very video back in 2021, and because of the resulting lawsuit, I've always endeavored to be much more careful about what I say. And if I do say something factual, I always try to ensure that I have ample concrete evidence to support it. On the 4th of June 2021, I was contacted by Keemstar, who on a call advised me that Billy was very unhappy with the comment I made regarding the settlement, and that it was false. In response to this, I removed that section and advised Keemstar to tell Billy that I had removed it and that I would make a retraction if Apollo's brother or Billy provides evidence that the claim was false. I then sent Apollo's brother an email explaining the situation, and asked if he could confirm if my statement was incorrect. Several hours after I removed the statement from my video, Billy posted to his channel a response video. In it, he stated that my claim was wrong and that I was accusing him of murder.
Is your civil case decided by a judge or a jury? I think it's the complainant, the complainer, in this case would be Pixie, gets to decide if you request a jury trial or not. I think they requested a jury trial, but that court date is like a year out, I think, because they set them far in advance. And I think right now the plan is that this case would probably be dismissed in summary judgment. We just have to wait till that phase comes about.
May 26th, Jobs released a video downright loaded with false defamatory statements.
Damn.
The most heinous accusation related to Apollo's passing.
Damn.
In the video, Jobs outright states that I drove Apollo to suicide.
Uh-oh.
In his words, he may as well have just said murder.
Several days later, I received a concerns notice from Billy's lawyer. This is a legal document that you must send to someone before you sue them for defamation. It's the first step in the process. It needs to outline the words of which they complain, what they imply, and why they are false. I didn't take this seriously when I received it, because it wasn't the first concerns notice that Billy had ever sent me. A year earlier, Billy had sent me a concerns notice after I called him a cheater in a video about Guinness World Records.
My guess here is a concern notice is basically the same thing as a cease and desist in the United States. Some people will get a cease and desist and say, oh my God, look, they're suing me. I got a cease and desist. Anybody can write a cease and desist. What a cease and desist does is it puts you on notice saying, hey, just so you know, you're doing something that I think is really wrong. It's so wrong that I could sue you. So here are some steps I'd like you to take to correct the action because I think this is so wrong. That's all a cease and desist is. It doesn't actually mean it's not like an actual thing that means you're getting sued. It could, but will almost always oftentimes be the precursor to a lawsuit.
This was just after they reinstated his fake world records. The concerns notice was ridiculous, as obviously Billy is a proven cheater and everyone knows this, and it falsely claimed that I implied he was a criminal because I suggested that he may have paid Guinness to reinstate his scores, even though paying Guinness to adjudicate world records is literally their business model. And during this time, Billy was suing multiple entities for telling the truth that he is a cheater. So there was no reason for me to believe that his second concerns notice regarding Apollo Legend was any more trustworthy, and I assumed it was completely bogus and an attempt to silence me, just like all of his other actions. A couple of days after I received Billy's concerns notice regarding Apollo Legend, I
Did he said 2 years ago he got one as well? From Billy as well? Is that what he said from Billy?
My video to add back in my claims regarding the settlement. Again, I believed them to be true, and my efforts to avoid legal action by taking them down had failed. In the pinned comment of Billy's response video, he even said that removing the words or making a retraction would make no difference. Several days after I reinstated my claim, I received an email reply from Apollo Legend's brother. He confirmed that originally, Billy had tried to get money from Apollo, but this greatly upset Apollo because he simply had no money to give, and ultimately they adjusted the settlement, and in the final version there was no money transferred. As soon as I received this email, I removed my claim from my video, and it has been gone ever since. After I removed the claim from my video, we responded to Billy's lawyers advising them that the segment was removed and that I would be issuing a retraction. Billy said this was not sufficient, and in the response from Billy's lawyer, they stated that proceedings were necessary. Despite this, I still planned on releasing a retraction, and in my video, The Greatest Feat in Video Game History, I included this segment at the end. Now, before I finish the video, I would like to take this opportunity to correct something that I said in a previous video. Back in May, I talked about the new lawsuits filed by Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell. In that video, I made the claim that Apollo Legend paid money to Billy Mitchell as part of their settlement. I would never make such a claim unless I had very good evidence to support my position. In response to this, Billy Mitchell released a video accusing me of lying and claimed that no money was exchanged. He didn't provide any evidence to back up this claim, nor did he attempt to get in contact with me to clear up any misinformation I may have had. However, I did investigate further, as I would never want to provide false information to my viewers. I reached out to a member of Apollo's family who graciously agreed to clarify some details. According to them, despite Mitchell's best efforts, Apollo Legend would not pay any money, and in the final version of the settlement, there was no clause indicating that he was required to do so. Therefore, the statement I made in that video was almost certainly incorrect. I sincerely apologize for providing false information, and no matter what kind of relationship I have with Mitchell, I do not believe that it is ever justified to lie or mislead. Mitchell also claimed that I was accusing him of murder. This is certainly not the case. I do have my opinion regarding the impact of the settlement on Apollo's decision, but ultimately, it was no one's responsibility but his own. The only reason I mentioned it in that video was because I felt like it was important to let you know what happened, as I know many of you enjoyed his videos. My standard of evidence has changed dramatically since I made this original claim, so of course, now I disagree with my statement that I had very good evidence. But I was just trying to say that I didn't just make this up out of nowhere, and I didn't consider Billy's legal threat against me as him trying to get in contact with me, which is why I said that he didn't. After I released my retraction...
When would summary judgment be? I was going to actually get a fucking book and just read through the federal rules of civil procedures. I don't know them all. But from what I've been told, basically, you want to wait for a little bit of discovery so the other time has some side to... so that the other side has some time to make their case if they want to, and it shows better faith, I guess, to a judge. But then after, I guess, a couple months or whatever, I don't know how long you have to wait, you can file for a motion of summary judgment if you feel like the other side has failed to state a claim, which is where we're at right now. But the other side is like praying that they find something or discover something, basically.
My lawyers contacted Billy's lawyer to let them know, though we never heard back. I've heard a lot of people say that I'd never made a retraction or never attempted to correct the record or was trying to hide my retraction, and that if only I had just made a retraction, this entire thing would have been avoided. But that's just not the case. I wanted the retraction to get as many views as possible. I even said as much to my lawyers at the time, and ultimately it did. My retraction got far more views than the original video. But it was clear from Billy, even before I made the retraction, that it wasn't going to affect his actions in any way. Then, in September 2021, Billy filed his lawsuit against me.
This could also be the case too. Somebody could send you a cease and desist, but they might still be fully intending to sue you. Like, they'll just send it first because I think generally the court wants to see it first, but they could file it and still sue you after. It's not like they are not allowed to sue you if you comply with the terms of the cease and desist. You could already feel like you've been aggrieved or damaged in such a way that you want to sue them regardless.
Those are the events that led up to the lawsuit. But if the lawsuit was apparently just about my claim about the Apollo Legend settlement, then why did many people believe that it was about allegations of cheating?
It's as soon as discovery is completed. I thought I heard, actually my guy might have just told me this, maybe it's not true. I thought that you're allowed to file for summary judgment before discovery is necessarily completed. Do you have to wait for the whole discovery phase to end? Because if so, I don't know how long, I don't know when ours is set. I'm sure you fuckers probably over the docket. You can pull that and find out. But
September 2021, Billy filed his lawsuit against me. Those are the events that led up to the lawsuit. But if the lawsuit was apparently just about my claim about the Apollo Legend settlement, then why did many people believe that it was about allegations of cheating? There are multiple reasons, and yes, I am one of them, but it wasn't just my YouTube audience who thought that. It was even news outlets. In fact, they were playing segments on national news about how Billy was suing me for cheating.
A bitter war of Donkey Kong has exploded, with controversy over a high score making it all the way to a Queensland courtroom. An American video game champion is suing a Brisbane YouTuber.
Video game champion?
And they didn't think that because I told them them or because they watch my videos. They ran that story because of the arguments that were being made during the lawsuit and the nature of the pleadings. In Australian defamation, you must look at the entire publication. If I publish a video, Billy doesn't get to just extract a single paragraph and ignore everything else. In the video where I made those claims about the Apollo settlement, I also claimed that Billy was exposed for cheating. I claimed that he was banned for cheating. I said that he abuses the legal system to force people to acknowledge his video game scores. And I said that he expressed joy at the thought of Apollo Legend's death, because he did. I mean, I even showed in that same video text messages where Billy said he would try his hardest not to smile and giggle if Apollo Legend was actually dead. So
If it is true, I will not shed a tear. I will try my very hardest not to smile or giggle. Oops,
as part of Australian defamation law, there is a concept known as contextual truth. And
no, you can move for summary judgment if the remaining discovery would not produce anything that would create an issue of material fact. Okay, that's what I'm hoping, but we'll see.
this was one of my defenses. My defense...
Is it just the Pixie case, or are you dealing with... nope, it's literally just the Pixie stuff. That's it. And that's all it ever will be. Or so you think. No, that is.
States that because I made those other claims that both hurt Billy's reputation and were true, Billy was harmed anyway, and the words he complained of didn't harm him any more than he otherwise would have been. And in response to these other claims, Billy denied them all. He denied that he was exposed for cheating, he denied that he was banned by Twin Galaxies, he denied that he abuses the legal system, and he denied that he expressed joy at the thought of Apollo Legend's death. And because he denied those extra claims, the breadth of argument during the lawsuit expanded to include those as well. And the media evidently latched onto the cheating claims, because Billy was denying those, and that was his main reputation. So on one hand, the reason Billy originally sued me was because of Apollo Legend, but on the other hand, because he doesn't get to just isolate that one paragraph and ignore everything else.
What about the hacker? These are personal decisions I have to decide if I want to go through it or not. The issue is that if I make any progress on that case right now, just because of everything that's been brought up because of the recent stuff, like all of it is just a negative PR hit for me at this point. Like even if I were to find the person and everything, every single thing, every time it gets rehashed in the media, every time anything about it comes up, it's just going to be another negative PR hit for me. And then on this Pixie case, by the end of this, I'm probably going to have wasted maybe $100,000 plus however much money she's wasting. So it's like, fuck, like I don't know how much of an appetite I have for pursuing stuff past this point, but you know, who knows? We'll see, I guess.
In the video, the cheating allegations, along with other more serious claims, became involved. And ultimately, the judge did agree that those other claims were made and that they were substantially true, though in his opinion, they weren't more serious than the claim Billy was...
What do you think it was? Oh, I'm like 99.99% sure it was her ex-boyfriend. Or her current boyfriend on her account or whatever. I don't know if they're still dating or not. But...
that those other claims were made and that they were substantially true, though in his opinion, they weren't more serious than the claim Billy was suing over, which I personally don't agree with. In my personal opinion, I think expressing joy over Apollo Legend's death is far worse than any implication that the eventual settlement of Billy's $1 million lawsuit against a young YouTuber who had major health issues and no money and who was just expressing the truth might have contributed in some way to his decision to end his life. After Billy filed his lawsuit, I released a video in September 2021 titled "I'm Being Sued and Cancelled," where I announced...
If the case is tossed, then can't you recoup expenses from the other party? From what I was told, this is just by my lawyer, so I don't know, maybe he's wrong, but from what I was told, in America, everybody basically pays for their own lawsuits. Recovering court costs or attorney fees from the other side is, from what I was told, is exceptionally rare. It just typically doesn't happen, so...
After Billy filed his lawsuit, I released a video in September 2021 titled "I'm Being Sued and Cancelled," where I announced that I was officially being sued. In that video, I specifically state that I'm not going to talk about what the lawsuit was about. Normally, I'd give you a full breakdown of this kind of thing, but because this one involves me, I'm going to keep my cards a lot closer to my chest. What I will tell you is that I am being sued for defamation, and the amount of damages being sought is $450,000. I will definitely be giving you updates as we go, but I don't want to give out too many details or strategies before I use them in court. After this, I didn't talk about my lawsuit at all for over a year, and during this time, news outlets were posting articles about how Billy was suing me for cheating. Again, this wasn't because I said this.
Pixie's ex? No. The ex of the chick I was talking to online.
I wasn't even talking about my lawsuit at all. These articles were being written because reporters were reading the court documents where these issues were being argued. And I wasn't going to go out of my way to draw attention away from the cheating allegations either. Part of my defense was that Billy, more than anything else, has a reputation as a cheater. And when you think about Billy Mitchell, people don't think about that one brief claim I made in a video in 2021 and then retracted. They just associate him with cheating and abusing the legal system. The fact that so many people didn't even know about the Apollo Legend settlement claim is evidence of that. Then in 2022, Billy sent me a third concerns notice because of a video I released in April regarding one of Billy's witnesses accusing him of extortion. And he followed that up with another lawsuit, of which he sent to my lawyers and told them he was going to file it against.
Is it frustrating that people find the Ryan Beard video compelling? I mean, like, I think it's a decent layout of, like, all of the past dramas and stuff I've been involved in. I mean, I understand, I guess, why people would find something like that compelling. It's just for, like, to go into every single thing and to like figure out like, okay, well, who is, you know, this person, or why do we have this relationship with this person? Like some things are things that were genuinely just mistakes by me that I shouldn't have done. So like the Mia Rose stuff, but then he'll be saying things like, you know, why is he held accountable for this? Like, well, I mean, for a lot of these, like I've apologized for him, or, you know, I'm fine with the other person. I've talked to them. Like, what do you want me to say? What do you want to, like, I don't know what you're asking for here at this point. And then other things I think I would argue are things that were goofy or blown out of proportion. So for instance, like the Anna stuff, like people like, especially because Mr. Girl built his whole fucking internet career on the Anna shit. It's like, these are all adults that are involved in this. No, there's like, nobody's being raped here. Like if somebody wants to just like, nothing is forcing anybody to continue with all of this. Like if Anna wanted at any point in time, she could just stop talking to me. She didn't have to message me. She didn't have to go live. She didn't have to do this stuff. Like we're all like 30 plus. Like it's insane how much people look at this as like a fucking, like a horrendously abusive scenario. Like, come on, let's grow the fuck up. But it is what it is. Am I dumb, or do you have a counter case for defamation? I considered it on some parts, especially related to some things. I don't think I want to talk about that yet, though, because I don't know. I'm trying not to discuss too much like legal strategy, I guess. But
to me. And then he sent me a fourth concerns notice, saying he intended to sue me because I put a 10-second AVGN meme in a video completely unrelated to Billy. Billy was now threatening me with 3 simultaneous lawsuits. The first one had already cost $200,000 in the first year alone. So if Billy filed the second and third lawsuits, there was no way I could afford to defend myself. I had Billy Mitchell, the guy who had already sued multiple people for exposing his cheating and who had already sued me once before, telling me he was going to sue me 2 more times. And the reasons were insane. They were obvious abuses of the legal system. I felt I had no choice but to create a GoFundMe, and I advertised it in a video called Billy Mitchell Has Gone Insane and I Need Your Help. In that video, I clearly explain what is happening and why I'm creating the GoFundMe. Every single word I said in that video was true, and all of this is explained in the video. I understand that this was several years ago, so I don't blame anyone for not remembering the video or why I created the GoFundMe, but it wasn't in response to the first lawsuit that ultimately went to trial. It was because of Billy's constant legal threats against me, most of them having nothing to do with the Polo legend. This video got a lot of attention at the time. Even Moist Critical made a video about it.
This is one of the most baffling reasons for a lawsuit I think I've probably ever heard in general. Now, as I understand it, the second lawsuit hasn't been fully filed yet. Right now, it is still in the letter of intent stage, where they are intending to sue Karl and have sent him the documents to indicate such, but it looks like it is going to be sent in the coming days.
And the GoFundMe raised 150,000 Australian dollars immediately. If anyone came away from that video thinking that Billy was suing me for saying he cheated, it's because he had started the process for doing exactly that, on top of everything else. Ultimately, these extra actions never made it all the way to trial, but there was no way for me to know that at the time. And it was possibly even because of the success of the GoFundMe that Billy ended up backing down. People are now using the fact that Billy didn't go all the way through with his threats to say that the GoFundMe was a scam. But I was just responding to actions taken by Billy and protecting myself. And the money was used exactly for the purposes that I said it would be, which was to help cover legal fees. This narrative that this whole thing was only ever about Apollo Legend, which ironically is a narrative that started with Billy Mitchell, is completely false. And if that were the case, Billy would not have taken action against me on 4 separate occasions, with 3 of those having nothing to do with Apollo Legend. That is why I never thought this whole thing was actually about Apollo Legend. I had been threatened and was dealing with so many actions from Billy that were related to cheating that from my perspective, this Apollo Legend lawsuit was just Billy trying to capitalize on a mistake I made. But wrong or right, I was under the...
have you made a video about the Abrego Garcia stuff? No, but like a ton of other people have like covered it.
impression that Billy was suing me because they kept talking about his cheating and talking about him in a negative light in general. Otherwise, those other actions made no sense whatsoever. It was clear to me that his goal was just to silence me, especially when it came to the Apollo Legend claim, as I had already removed the words and made a retraction. The only other time I mentioned the
Am I alone in thinking this is incredibly boring? It's pretty boring. But it's just, I mean, this guy's defending himself for why he feels like he's been unfairly mischaracterized by the internet as having taken advantage of all the people that fundraised money for his lawsuit against the Billy dude.
GoFundMe was at the end of a video I released in August of 2023, where ironically, I was responding to Billy saying that my GoFundMe was a scam. However, in this video, I allow Billy to fully explain why he's suing me, and I even say myself that the lawsuit relates to Apollo Legend.
Okay, but time went on, and eventually, without a single source, except a now deleted post on Reddit, now deleted post was his only source where he blamed me for taking the life of another human being and for what I did to him. And I said, that's it.
Billy Mitchell is referring to the YouTuber Apollo Legend, who tragically took his own life in December of 2020. I won't go into specifics about this particular point because it does relate to his ongoing lawsuit against me. Of course, I do pick apart a lot of Billy's lies, and I deny that I actually said Billy took Apollo Legend's life, because I didn't, but I wasn't trying to hide the fact that the lawsuit was related to Apollo Legend. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even made this video or say directly that it was. And of course, I do also say that the allegations of cheating are relevant, because they were being argued as well. After I promoted the GoFundMe in this video, it quickly reached $200,000, at which time I closed it and stopped accepting donations, which was almost a year year before we went to trial. So throughout 2024, as I began talking about the trial more and more, the GoFundMe was already closed and I wasn't accepting money from the public. I have seen people point to the description of the GoFundMe and say that it didn't provide enough information or exact details about what the lawsuits and threats were about, and in that regard, I totally understand if people think that was bad practice or an issue. I can only apologize and say that I didn't give the description much thought. As I said, I only mentioned or linked to the GoFundMe in 2 videos outlining things in much more detail, which I assumed people had already watched. Though if I knew the description should have included everything, I would have absolutely no problem doing just that. The fact that so many people got upset or felt misled after the judge's decision and I lost the lawsuit came as a huge shock to me. There was a lot of reporting being done around the time of the trial, and no backlash occurred then, when it was also very clear what the trial was about. And I've had many people tell me they always knew exactly what the lawsuit was about and they don't feel misled. So it would be very easy for me just to claim that people are only upset because I lost and Billy won, which is not the outcome everyone wanted. But I don't think that's entirely true either. I never said that Billy Mitchell sued me for cheating, but I also did not repeat or draw attention to the original claim that got me in trouble. Nor did I constantly remind people that the lawsuit related to Apollo Legend. Not because I was trying to scam anybody or mislead people, but because I believed it would have been detrimental to my case. I was very happy to talk publicly about Billy threatening to sue me for calling him a cheater, and to go into detail about how much of a cheater he is, because all of that is true. Despite the fact that he had threatened me multiple times for calling him a cheater, I was not afraid to continue making that claim. And I was happy to discuss his cheating, even when it related to my currently ongoing lawsuit, because it was one of my defenses. When it came to Apollo Legend, this was a different story. I made a claim that included information that was not true. I didn't accuse Billy of murdering Apollo or causing his death, so I don't think I should have lost the lawsuit, but at the end of the day, I said something that was not accurate, which I admitted to and corrected years ago. And I was never going to repeat it because the internet doesn't work like we want it to work. If I drew more attention to Billy's claims about what I said, more people would have repeated it, and it would have been used against me in court. For example, Billy's team crawled through thousands and thousands of comments on two most critical videos about Billy Mitchell, which were released years after my video. They found a handful of comments that related to Apollo Legend, and then without any causal link, claimed that they were a direct result of my video. Even though there was no mention of me or my channel, and we don't know who these people are or why they are making these comments, the judge ruled that I'm responsible. Essentially, it didn't seem to matter if people may have come to this conclusion independently, and it didn't seem to matter if there was no evidence linking their conclusion to my original video. The blame for every single comment was entirely placed upon me. The judge even flat out stated that no comments of this nature were ever made before my video. And not only is this one of the reasons the damage...
Okay, this is boring. All right. If this guy said, wow, aposiopesis, I don't know how to pronounce this. Thanks for the advice, everybody. If this guy said what he believed to be true, how can he be sued for defamation? Is this some Aussie anti-free speech bullshit? No, just other countries have standards of proof for defamation, and just thinking that you're correct isn't enough in a lot of countries. I think in most countries, that's not enough to protect you from being sued for defamation or slander. This crazy guy mentioned you on Breaking Points this morning. You should have seen Crystal's face. She doesn't like you, LeMayo. I know she doesn't like me. Wait, you are talking about Richard Hanania?
And to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly.
You should watch the full one with the intro from the press sec. What, the full one of this? Link me. Delete, ban Luca. Luca is not banned right now.
Good afternoon, everybody. President Trump campaigned on the promise to secure our homeland and deport violent alien criminals from our communities. That is why the American people overwhelmingly reelected him back to this office, and it's why the American people defeated the Democrat Party in devastating fashion. Today, we have officially learned Democrat officials still refuse to accept the will of the American people. Maryland Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen rushed to Dulles Airport this morning to fly to El Salvador, potentially using taxpayer dollars to demand the release of deported, illegal, alien MS-13 terrorists. The Democrats and the media in this room have continually and wrongly labeled Kilmar Abrego Garcia as a Maryland father. There is no Maryland father. Let me reiterate. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist who was deported back to his home country. And when Kilmar Abrego Garcia was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money covering the ears, mouth, and eyes of presidents on various currencies.
She's conflating and playing a game here. When she says he was originally arrested, I'm pretty sure this is referring back to the 2019 arrest, not the recent deportation. She's playing word games here, but they do this all the time. The fact that she's willing to conflate those should be all the evidence you need to see that she's completely and totally fucking lying about, everything related to this case. But
denominations. This is a known MS-13 gang symbol of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Abrego Garcia was also arrested with two other well-known members of the vicious MS-13 gang. And two separate judges found that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13.
When she says they found that he was a member, I wish that there was a name. I'm sure there is. I don't know what the name is for this, but I've spoken about this a lot on stream. It's a very frustrating thing that people that are poor researchers do. I think Finkelstein does this a lot, for instance. There's this thing where you cite a document, but you don't cite what the important part of the document is actually saying. You just cite to a part of the document that it wasn't investigating. Like, imagine I'm talking about a news report, and that news report is talking about a politician coming out and making a statement on, illegal immigration. But part of that news report says something like, it was a very rainy day. Imagine I cite that news report as evidence for climate change. And I was like, well, look, they said it was a rainy day here, and that never happens. And it said that it was an exceptionally rainy day. Well, that's not what that news report was there to determine. That wasn't the central matter of what the news report was addressing. I don't believe there was a full court case to determine or ascertain, like, is this guy in some criminal or civil matter, is he actually an MS-13 gang member? I think this was just part of the considerations that the court had for whatever they were considering at the time. It wasn't there to make some formal legalistic finding of him being a gang member or not, because even after that court case, they allowed him to remain in the United States, and he was. It was 2019. There's a reason he wasn't deported and why he was put on hold or pause against being deported. So whatever she's saying that court, quote unquote, found, how they adjudicated the case, basically, they made this assumption based on a little bit of evidence, but it's not like there was a huge back and forth on this. They still didn't deport him.
And that finding has never been disputed. And just this morning, it was revealed through Maryland court documents that Abrego Garcia's wife petitioned for an order of protection against him for 2 instances of domestic violence in May of 2021. And here is the order right here. The court ordered that the respondents committed the following acts of abuse. Once in May of 2021, assault in any degree. And on May 4th of 2021, court ordered that the respondents committed the following acts of abuse right here. Instances of domestic violence in May of 2021. And here is the order through Maryland court documents that Abrego Garcia's wife petitioned for an order of protection against him for 2 instances of domestic violence in May of 2021. And here is the order right here. The court ordered that the respondents committed the following acts of abuse. Once in May of 2021, assault in any degree. And on May 4th of 2021, he punched and scratched his wife, ripped off her shirt, and grabbed and bruised her. This is from a court in Maryland. So not only are Democrats rushing to defend an illegal criminal...
But he wasn't deported, right? Just because you commit a crime doesn't automatically mean you're deported. Also, it sounds like this was just an order from a judge. What was this, like a temporary restraining order? This is just the claim on the wife's part. It doesn't sound like this was no, I'm sorry. He wasn't convicted of this because she would have said that he was convicted of these crimes if that was actually the case. So we're just bringing out accusations now, right? Oh, this is just a wife's petition. Sure.
A foreign terrorist gang member, but also an apparent woman beater. To set all of that aside, the basic fact that he was illegally inside our country and had a lawful deportation order made him subject to removal back to his home country of El Salvador. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again. Nothing will change the fact that Abrego Garcia will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again. And the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the President of the United States and the Secretary of State could not be compelled to forcibly retrieve this citizen of El Salvador who is currently locked up in a maximum security prison in his home country due to his MS-13 membership. To remind the media and the Democrat Party, MS-13 are among the most vicious and dangerous individuals in this world. They pose a direct threat to the United States, El Salvador, and any other country who maintains basic law and order. MS-13 rapes innocent girls and women, runs sex trafficking operations, murders for sport, and terrorizes law-abiding people. That's why El Salvador President Bukele made it
Like, when she says he'll never be a husband or whatever, or a father, is the child dead? Are they divorced? Or, like...
clear this week that he will not be releasing this MS-13 gang member from his prison. But that is not enough. All of that is not enough to stop the Democrat Party.
Abrego Garcia's wife responds after restraining order revealed. The wife of a Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador is criticizing the Trump administration for publicly releasing details of a 2021 restraining order against him. Jennifer Vasquez Sura, whose husband, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, was deported just before the U.S. Supreme Court ordered his return, called the move an unjust act of abduction to defend her husband against the resurfaced allegations. It was a request for a protective order. After surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution, following a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated. She said, things did not escalate and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. We were able to work out the situation privately as a family, including by going to counseling. Our marriage only grew stronger in the years that followed. No one is perfect and no marriage is perfect, but that is not a justification for ICE's action in abducting him. Really, she shouldn't even have to say this. Like, there wasn't even a criminal charge. And even if there was, you wouldn't deport somebody for this. Like, what the fuck?
From their lies. The number one issue they are focused on right now is bringing back this illegal alien terrorist to America. But where are the Democrats applauding the fact that southern border crossings just hit a historic low? Where are the Democrats supporting our brave men and women of law enforcement who are putting their lives on the line every single day to arrest the violent illegal alien invaders that the previous administration allowed into our country?
Wow.
And where are the Democrats when innocent Americans are victimized by illegal criminals that Joe Biden let in? It's appalling and sad that Senator Van Hollen and the Democrats applauding his trip to El Salvador today are incapable of having any shred of common sense or empathy for their own constituents and our citizens. Nobody knows this more than the woman standing to my right, Patty Morin, whose beautiful daughter Rachel was brutally maimed and murdered at the hands of an illegal alien in August.
This is also super ultra disgusting. This is ultra gross. And I keep asking, like, wait, this isn't related to that case, right? They keep doing this thing where every time they're talking about a deportation, they just bring in another person who happens to have had a family member that was like killed by an immigrant or an illegal immigrant. And it's like, what does this have to do with the case? Why? What? This is completely and totally irrelevant on any of this. Like, why do we? But that's what we're doing now, I guess.
And our citizens. Nobody knows this more than the woman standing to my right, Patty Morin, whose beautiful daughter Rachel was brutally maimed and murdered at the hands of an illegal alien in August of 2023. Patty no longer has her daughter because of the failed Democrat Party's open border, and these are policies that President Trump is bringing an end to. Patty should not have to be here today, but she is, and we are grateful and we are honored for her willingness.
Well, she is, because you want to use her dead, rotting daughter as propaganda for your authoritarianism, but okay.
And her request to share her powerful story with the world. Thank you, Patty, for being here.
Thank you. A lot of you don't know the whole story about Rachel and about the crime that was committed against her. Even us, her family, we didn't know all the details. They kept most of it close to their chest, the detectives, because they didn't want to do anything to hurt the case. They wanted to keep the integrity of the case, so they kept everything close. I sat for the last 2 weeks in her trial, and we saw layer upon layer upon layer of evidence against the accused, an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. And the things that we thought, well, maybe this might have happened, we didn't know, but when we were at the trial, we got all the puzzle pieces. And I want to share some of those things with you.
Oh, boy.
You know that Rachel's a 37-year-old mother. She has 5 children. We've walked the trail for the last 25 years that we've lived in Maryland. It's a safe place for our family. It's where we go to get a little bit of New England, because that's where we're from, New England. When she went on that trail that day, she was not planning on dying. She wasn't planning on walking to her death. She was planning on going to the grocery store with her girls afterwards.
Yeah, most people don't plan on
Victor
dying.
Martinez, he waited for her. He waited for her to come closer. He saw her. He saw that there was nobody around. He attacked her. He dragged her 150 feet, blood gushing from her head. It left a 150-foot trail of her blood to the culverts, where he took He picked her up. He threw her against the wall of the tunnel, and he raped her. But before he did that, he stopped on that trail, and rocks, still stained with her blood, he used them to hammer her head against those rocks. They say at least 20 times they could count the cuts in her head. They said that when they did the autopsy, and I've seen the pictures, there's a 6-inch square in the back of her.
Just to be reminded, this has absolutely nothing to do with any of the people who were deported, but okay.
Her head, where the skull is shattered the way that you would crush an eggshell, in pieces. 3/4 of her brain hemorrhaged. Her right and left side of her face bashed in. Her beautiful face bashed in. Her head, broken bones, fractures. He takes and he drags her some more. He drags her through the thorn bushes. She has all the scrapes and cuts on her body. There wasn't 1 inch of her body that didn't have some kind of injury, whether it's bruising, broken bones, contusions, the scratches. She had a fractured rib, fractured nose, fractured skull. And then he takes her into the tunnel and he picks her up. He throws her against the wall. Blood is gushing from her head. Her hair is soaked in blood. And they showed us pictures of her body against the wall, outlined. The blood outlined her body. And you could see where the blood ran down around her as he was raping her. And then he threw her down and raped her some more.
Jesus.
And then he strangled her because he didn't want her to be able to live to tell the story. They said that when they did the autopsy on her neck, that one of the things they do is they open up the neck and they look to see how far the injury is. And they went all the way down as far as an injury is possible, hemorrhaging in the...
Remember, these are the same people where when a school shooting happens and Democrats are like, we need to do something about guns. They're like, I can't believe you would dare use any school shooting event like this as a way to push for your policy. Meanwhile, so my daughter, he raped her for the 47th time. His cock was a massive 4-inch diameter, larger than any of the dildos I found in her room. And he just tore that fucking pussy up. He was just fucking smashing doggy style, missionary, reverse cowgirl. It was just insane how much he was fucking demolishing my daughter's fucking... Like, Jesus Christ. Holy shit. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Muscles, because of how strong and violent the group was around her. These are the kind of people that have no compulsion. Like, to them, this is nothing. And when he was sitting in the courtroom, he actually looked like he thought he was going to be set free. There was no remorse on his face at all. This person took my daughter so violently and so gruesomely and so graphically that they sealed the pictures, because I don't want my granddaughters to see these pictures. These are the kind of criminals President Trump wants to remove from our country. These are the kind of criminals that we need to remove from our country. We are American citizens. Why should we allow...
Is that even true? Like, I guess I haven't had anybody in my family kill this way. If somebody did this to a family member of mine or a loved one of mine, would I be content to just see them being deported? I feel like I would want them to stand trial in my fucking country. I don't want you to get shipped back to some country where I don't know where the fuck you're gonna go. You murdered a family member of mine in the United States and you get arrested and proven to do that in the United States. I want you to be punished in my fucking country. What the fuck?
People like this, violent criminals that have no conscience at all, to murder our mothers, our sisters, our daughters. I don't understand why there's even any kind of problem with this. And it's not that it's political, like the left or the right, although I understand different parties have used it in the past. But we have to look at it as we are American citizens. We need to protect our families, our borders, our children. I don't care about politics. Well, I do, but I want to preserve life. And that's the only reason why I have taken and spoken about Rachel all this time. If you're a mother here in the room, can you imagine standing there alive, you're alive, and someone comes and puts their hands into your chest and rips out your heart? That's what it feels like. It feels like a part of you is being ripped out of you, You can't even describe the pain. Just like you can't describe to your husband what it feels like to carry a baby in your womb, or to feel those first kicks, or to know just intuitively if it's a boy or a girl. It's only a thing that a mother knows. Why are we not protecting the American citizens? It's just common sense. Why are we not protecting our children?
It's common
And
sense.
to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen.
Wow, what was that connection? What? What?
So that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person...
Yeah, true, YouTube chatter. Yeah, I'm sure that in her daughter's dying last moment, she's like, God, I hope my mom uses this so that she can be a political stooge for Republicans who don't want to give due process to people being deported in this country for issues that have absolutely nothing to do with my death right now.
have more right than I do, or my power, to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen? Why does that person have more right than I do, or my daughter, or my grandchildren? I don't understand this.
None of us do, lady.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And
How
I just want to
beautiful.
say that
How beautiful. What do you want to say?
as a mother,
Tell us, yeah?
and as an American citizen, the president and our entire team, and
We
I hope
vibe
people
with
in this
you.
room are grateful
We
for
vibe
your
hard with
willingness
that.
to come here and your request to share your daughter's story. And I think the country hears you loud and clear. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Patty?
Yeah,
or for
guys.
me?
Wait, was this like a special thing or whatever, or was this just the ordinary press briefing?
No? I have a question. No? Anybody? Okay. We'll see you all later. The president will be at his dinner later this evening. Thank you.
Wait, what happened?
Anybody? For me? No? I have a question. No? Anybody?
Did she say no? Was it CNN or something, or?
For me? No? I have a question.
There's at least one hand over here.
No? Anybody?
Oh, there were hands. Oh, okay.
We'll see you all later. The president will be at his dinner later this evening. Thank you for being here this morning. We really appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Hi, what's up, buddy?
Hey, do you have a minute?
Yeah, what's going on?
Oh, not much. I just I saw you read the Boasberg opinion last night. Did you finish reading that? Because I know you had to leave.
I skipped like the middle part of it, but I'm guessing most of it was just citations to basically justifying the criminal contempt thing. So I read the first like 12 pages and then the last like 3 basically.
Yeah, it's a very well written order. I think he does a good job. But yeah, I think you got the most of it. But I just wanted to touch on like 1 or 2 things in there. First, whenever we first discussed this, I need to say this. I was a little too confident in saying that contempt was off the table, because I was mostly looking at it from a personal jurisdiction view. It's a very arcane and boring argument that I'm not going to get into, but I'd say like I was probably like 80-20 in confidence before. Now I'm more like 60-40, but that's even if the government makes that argument, which they haven't yet. So we'll see what happens.
Sure.
Anyway, sorry. I just wanted to correct the record for myself on that one. The biggest thing so I think you might have missed this part since you didn't read the middle of it, was that Boasberg goes into a few defenses or options that the government might have to kind of try to get this to either succeed in a contempt trial or to avoid one entirely. And so the most likely one is that it would be a transparently invalid TRO. So if a TRO is transparently invalid, then you aren't expected to follow it. And
What is that? What is the definition for that? You're saying this was written in the TRO?
In the...
Or I'm sorry, not in his statement.
Yeah, if you look up transparently invalid, he goes into it a tiny bit, but doesn't commit very much time to it. Really, because that's going to be just something that's going to be argued over, and I think it's also something that's really not. There's not a bright line for it, or at least not one that's like satisfying for the purposes of this order. And so he says it's a high bar. He goes into a lot of it, and he makes kind of I would say, a slightly weak argument for why it's not transparently invalid. Now, I don't think it's transparently invalid, but I think that the
I would say that
be...
the government can argue that, but my intuition here would be that the government would be immediately lost on arguing that it was a transparently invalid order, because if the order was transparently invalid, I feel like the Supreme Court would have said as much, and I don't think they mentioned that at all in any part of their opinion, right?
I think that's fair. I think it's fair. I think that the Supreme Court...
in kind of a
probably,
clever way, I think that the government here actually is a little bit constrained by the fact that the Supreme Court, because they appealed this TRO, the Supreme Court more or less already looked at it, which has probably foreclosed some of the arguments that the government could have used, I would guess, right?
I think you're right. I think that if I look at this in a vacuum, if I looked at it in a vacuum and didn't look at like the government's actions or even kind of just like what happened in the arguments and the briefing between the appellate and the Supreme Court, I would say there might be an argument because we're looking at a habeas petition. It's something that should have been a habeas petition according to the Supreme Court, and it wasn't done correctly such that theoretically that the court they were in did not even have the proper jurisdiction to be doing the things it's doing. And so there's an argument down that path that says, oh, it's transparently invalid. However,
no, I wouldn't even agree with that, because even if that was the case, like the transparently invalid in this case looks like one of those things where you're talking about a standard of almost, I don't want to invoke reasonableness because I know that means something legally, but a thing where like a summary judgment motion. This is a thing that requires a judge to look at some evidence and to kind of like weigh if they feel like some evidence is valid or not. Not like in a, conviction type way, but like how strong do we feel about this? Like the judge can consider evidence in a summary judgment motion. It sounds like here for the TRO, it's a similar type of thing. Like if there is a TRO issued and the judge wrote a TRO saying Donald Trump needs to step down as president because of how ridiculous his behavior has been, or the United States need to cease all deportations while we figure out what's going on with this class, I think that there might be an argument there that this is a transparently invalid TRO. It's just ridiculous on its face. It never should have gone through. But again, for something that would have had such a low standard applied to it, I feel like the Supreme Court would have commented on that, and they didn't in any way, size, shape, or form, which I feel like would completely foreclose as the transparently invalid argument.
Sure, and I'll give you. I've got two things on that.
Sure.
One, what you just described did happen in the appellate court. The appellate court said, hold on for a second. This TRO is enjoining the president from doing something, and you cannot do that. And right there, it turned around and sent it back and said, you're not, that part is out. You're not doing it.
Okay.
And it was mainly the reason that the appellate court, it was one of the only reasons the appellate court even took the appeal on the TRO, was because of how facially
was the TRO
invalid it
changed
was.
then, or was then that appealed to the Supreme Court?
That part, no. Technically the TRO changed in the sense that part was excised, right? So the application of the TRO to everybody in the executive branch other than the president went on to the Supreme Court. And then...
Well, then if that part was changed, then that would have gotten rid of the transparently invalid part of it, no?
Well, that part of it, sure. But then we've got the rest of it. I agree with you that like a lack of comment from both the appellate court and the Supreme Court weighs heavily against the government. But the second part that I was going to say is that... Or even
I would say even the accepting, I don't know, would you say a writ of certiorari here when you're talking about an appeal of a TRO, but like the fact that the Supreme Court even held it or like reviewed it, because the Supreme Court also could have just rejected even hearing it after it was stayed by the appellate courts, no?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, we're really doing a lot of like... There's not going to be a clear answer here. This is a lot of weighing.
I disagree. I think it's a clear answer. If it was transparently invalid, then why would the Supreme Court waste their time? They have very limited time to hear cases. Why would they hear something that's transparently invalid, right? I think that once the circuit court shoots it down, the Supreme Court's going to waste their time on something that's so obvious, especially we're talking about a TRO appeal too. I feel like that I would be shocked if it went in that direction. But yeah, go ahead.
The appellate court said the TRO is not valid. The TRO is valid. The appellate court upheld the TRO. And then it came to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, it is not.
Oh, okay. Well, then in that case, nobody's stated or enjoined the TRO based on it being transparently invalid. Then no.
No, that's not the transparently invalid aspect was not brought up, and that's not.
Okay, okay.
And I agree with you that that does weigh in the favor of it not being transparently invalid. However, the way that this works, again, we're going to get a little bit into this personal jurisdiction argument, is that at no point did Boasberg ever have personal jurisdiction to enjoin the government or the attorneys or any of the parties that were named in the lawsuit. And that is a really, really weird thing in American law, that because normally if you show up to court, doesn't matter who you are, if you show up to court, they have jurisdiction over you, unless you're doing like a special appearance or something, which they didn't file.
Okay.
And in this case, the government showed up, so everybody would naturally assume they have personal jurisdiction, but habeas is one of the weird exceptions where you don't get personal jurisdiction by showing up. It is in the statute of who the personal jurisdiction is of, and it's the person jailing the person, or the warden, or the person detaining the person filing the habeas petition. So TROs, just like any other order, are only able to be enforced against people or parties whom the court has personal jurisdiction over. Now, this is where I'm at right now, is an entirely novel argument, and one that has not been tested. If you read through a lot of the cases, almost all the cases that are cited by Boasberg, they don't discuss personal jurisdiction. They discuss subject matter jurisdiction and other times that contempt was put down. Here, there is a question, and it got brought up by the appeals court, but wasn't really delved into, and the Supreme Court stayed really far the fuck away from it. They didn't say the word jurisdiction. I don't think they talked about jurisdiction at all, and they just talked about venue. And so I could see that snaking in there and possibly getting them out of this. I would not bet good money on it. I'm just saying that is the route that I see that has the most light in front of it for them.
Okay. That also seems unlikely to me, because Boasberg is, I guess one of the things you kind of brought up in the beginning of our conversation on this, Boasberg seems to have gone pretty far out of his way to be very careful about covering all of his tracks here in terms of how he writes these orders and everything that's been ruled on and everything. So the idea that they would escape from something so simply there, especially when, and I don't know at what point this would weigh against it, but especially when so much maliciousness that Boasberg took a lot of time to write about was shown by the government, I think weighs really heavily against them here.
I agree with you on that part. That's kind of what I was saying before. Of like, I took it into a vacuum. These are the things I'd argue. But then once you look at the facts, look at the procedural history, how the government's acted, their failure to bring up any of these points that I've just said at any point at any hearing, I think that they're very, very, very unlikely to succeed, even if they make the best version of that argument I just made. The next stage, right, and Boasberg hints at this, right, is that, hey, we now need to do a contempt trial. They have a right to a jury trial on a criminal contempt matter. And so that trial would almost certainly be held in Boasberg's court. He could name a different judge to handle it if he felt there was an issue, or there are a few other ways possibly that it could be done, but probably it's going to be in his court. And then I think you saw the part where it said, if the DOJ won't step up, I'll name my own prosecutor. Yeah. That's an interesting route to go, because it has been done in the past, though current members of the Supreme Court have already shown a negative eye towards that practice by courts.
True, although this is an exceptional circumstance, because it's one that would require the government to prosecute itself, which I think we've already decided, at least via OLC memos or something, that can't really be done, right?
Right, and I think that, like, if there were a time for it to be appropriate, now it would be, but unfortunately the justices that don't like it, I mean, to be fair, the two justices that have spoken out against it is Gorsuch and Thomas, and so, I mean, I think Thomas could probably, between the two of them, maybe they could rope enough of the other ones in there, but I could see Amy and Roberts not going along with that and upholding it.
I think it would come down to Roberts. I think Amy would be on board with this. It's the open the open contempt, and Boasberg goes through painstaking detail, like laying out the entire timeline. Like the issue here isn't even that the government was making bad arguments, right? It's the issue the government wasn't even fucking trying. They weren't even trying to argue this. It was a joke. Like you said, like there are novel arguments that are coming out after every single new order. And Boasberg was unbelievably patient. Come back to me with more information. You have nothing. Here's a day. Come back to me with this. Okay, 5 days. Give me an affidavit. It can't just be somebody saying you think you heard a thing and then an appeal and then a remanding and here's more days for this and give me I think that I just feel like it weighs so heavily against the government there. Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you. I could be wrong. I thought that Amy had made a comment about Thomas speaking out against Jack Smith. I thought Amy, I could be misremembering it. It's been a while since I read those opinions. I thought Amy had intentionally not agreed with Thomas whenever he went on that long, weird rant. But I could be misremembering. But then the hard part, I think, is that if we've got Boasberg appointing a prosecutor to prosecute the government or any of the attorneys that he's also probably going to name, because remember he said he's going to name individuals who led to the contempt.
Yes.
Which then kind of makes the question of how are you going to hold this trial, right? What he might do is have a few attorneys or members of the government be on trial and the government at large potentially, or some department or agency within it, being held in contempt. And then if he needs to remove them for whatever reason, he can at least keep the people there and at least have something on the books showing that this happened.
Well, what do you mean by that? Can you explain that?
Well, okay, what if he pulls in, Customs and Border Patrol and says, you guys are in contempt because you guys helped lie to this court. These affidavits were lies, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to just, theoretically find the whole agency in contempt. They'll really probably just do the agency head. Well, there might be some fiat or there might be some bullshit that comes down the line that says, well, you can't do this. You can't do that. We've never done that before. We're not going to do it against a whole agency. You can't do that.
That's what it sounds to me. And this isn't a part that I wasn't reading. It sounds like Boasberg is explicitly trying to avoid that, though. That's why Boasberg said it's not just going to be a blanket contempt thing. I'm going to start digging through the record and I'm going to find who I feel was personally involved in or had an obligation individually, I should say, to deliver some information to the court and failed to do so. Yeah.
Right, which I'm wondering if he's just going to do that by itself, or he's going to try to do a blended thing where he also is essentially trying to do some kind of attack on the government itself. I've seen some people talk about it as like an idea. I think the individual thing makes a lot of sense. I believe we talked about it the first time when we were talking about contempt, about how he can use this.
And the individual thing, it has to be an individual thing because we're talking about a criminal matter here. So unless he's going to RICO an entire department, there's not an individual, or you can't hold you can't charge a crime to an entire body. You have to name individuals, right? If we're talking a criminal contempt.
Well, yeah, it would be. Well, he could name an agency head on behalf of that agency, essentially, and he could just fine the agency. He could say, okay, well, based on this, I'm just going to fine the agency this much, right?
Well, yeah, but for a criminal, it's a criminal thing, right? So we're talking about more than fines being at stake here, no?
Potentially, he has the discretion to decide what.
So I think it will be individuals.
But then you look at then you look at the actual kind of realistic case that's then going to be happening is like I was saying, a judge in his own court is naming a prosecutor to prosecute these people in the government, and he's kind of just playing with himself at this point in his courtroom. And I without saying, this isn't going to go anywhere. There's nothing's going to result from this other than, as you said in the past, we're going to have shown that we did try to hold them account. We did the things, and they
what do you mean?
Rules.
What do you mean? Nothing will come from this.
Okay, so he says this person needs to go to jail for 45 days for lying to the court. Who's going to put him in jail?
I mean,
he's not going to. He can't appoint. He can appoint bailiffs technically, but that ends the minute they get out of the courtroom.
Sure.
He doesn't have a personal jail he can put him in. He doesn't have it. All those things flow through the executive.
Yeah,
it
they
doesn't
do.
matter
True.
what he says.
But I think
if the executive is obstinate.
This is a big point that I have though. Make them do it. Right? Make the executive say, yeah, this guy's been convicted of a crime. We're not putting him in jail. Make them do that. I think that's more important than just forgoing it. Yeah.
I totally agree. I'm just saying we are now creating the scenarios to show how unhinged they are. This is not and now, Boasberg will, fly a plane and go pick up all these people and bring them home. It is not quite, it's not symbolic, but it is very much like
although
as close to it as you can get.
I would be careful though, because The flying people back, that's a separate matter, right? This is a contemptuous charge related to the violation of the TRO, even though the TRO was eventually, like, this is a totally separate matter than even bringing people back, right? Like they could
Oh, sure. I was being
yeah.
facetious. I was
Oh,
just
sure,
like,
sure, sure.
trying
Yeah.
to show kind of like, I think there's a lot of people that see this. There've been a lot of headlines like, "Oh my God, probable cause. This is here we go." And it's like, this is a good thing. He should do this. I'm glad he's doing it, but this does not materially change anything right now, and is really something that I think we need to report on, understand, and
Sure.
point out how ridiculous the government is. But once that ends, Boasberg and everything going on in his court, that's it. There's not a lot more going on.
I mean, they could
However,
theoretically, at this point, couldn't they theoretically, remember, Boasberg is giving them an opportunity to purge their contempt, and a way to purge the contempt would be to comply with the TRO. So, I mean, like, one way out for them, and I don't think they'll do it. I think instead they'll find individuals to throw under the bus criminally. But one thing they could do is they could theoretically bring people back to purge the contempt charge, right?
Yeah, and there's that is a bit of a that brings us into like the other order that came out of Judge I would say her name wrong. It's not Zenas, right? It's Zenais,
That's what I say.
Zenais or
It looks like some kind of like
Yeah.
evil alien god, but yeah.
Yeah, so she had a really good point in her recent order. She filed an emergency discovery order, I believe that's what it was, and it gave a very, very rapid timeline of requiring discovery from the government regarding Abrego Garcia and his deportation. And it's a good one. It's only like 13 pages. And it gives them a few days to answer written discovery, and then it gives about, I think it's a week or 2 weeks to do actual depositions. And she says if these aren't complied with, we're going to just do we're just going to do evidentiary hearings.
Sure.
But in there, she makes a really good point that the government says that they cannot bring them back, right? They can, and they're claiming that and there's this big argument about facilitation. However, she points out that the government's made multiple statements that the people that were sent over there are being held there, one, at the request of the U.S. government, two, after the government paid El Salvador, and then three, there have been public statements that they're being held there until the U.S. determines how long they are to be held there. And she cites these in her order because, I mean, even if you just look at the facilitate aspect of the Boasberg order, the U.S. government could say, okay, we are not going to pay El Salvador anything, and we're going to ask for our money back. And if we don't get the money back, then we're going to withhold other payments for other things from El Salvador, which would then obviously mean that those men now are in there without being paid for in the El Salvadorian prison, which is a form of facilitating his return, right? You're taking actions to compel El Salvador for his return, and they bragged about how much money they paid him. And then they also said in statements, they are there because we have asked them to be there, and because we need to determine how long they're going to be there. And so I think that Boasberg, I think that with Boasberg, I think that kind of shows that when it comes to purging, it can't just be we're going to provide information, which that's what I think the government is going to do, is going to say, well, here we'll provide you the information you asked for, right? But we're not going to do anything, and then try to act like they fulfilled the order and then cast them in a bad light. I think that at this point, like, I think Zenas has a very good point, and obviously they're full of shit that they could do more.
Sure.
But there's not really a way for them to get around that, I would say. And so I'm interested to see how the contempt hearing goes, and kind of what the result of that is. But yeah, that's kind of the larger picture between those two cases kind of interacting. With the Abrego Garcia one, I saw you listening to them talk about the lady with the dead child just now. So did you see, or if you're going to get to it later, that's fine, but did you see that the senator from his state, from Maryland, went to try to see him and he was denied?
I think so, yeah, but the audio was so bad I couldn't even listen to it. But I saw that he was on Twitter or something going over it, I think, right? The guy that gave the interview?
Yeah, and then there was, while that senator was there was a Republican lawmaker in El Salvador touring the prison at the same time, while the El Salvadorians told this guy, oh no, we can't let you in and do that stuff, right?
Okay.
So I need to do a little bit of reading on this, but I've been looking into kind of the El Salvadorian, especially after that visit at the White House, it appears like the El Salvadorian government is very clearly taking direction from Donald Trump.
Of course.
And things like that. And so I don't know. Again, it's this kind of thing where, like, as a lawyer, I keep like thinking like, oh, well, you could bring this up, and it's like, yeah, but then like how's it going to get enforced? But if there could be some kind of communications that could be shown between the Trump administration and El Salvador, showing like clearly they're directing them to keep him or things like that, I think that would be really, really good to have, and really be able to show, just bring to light just how like just blatant, just like how undeniably they're done it. Because unfortunately, like, and I don't think they're good weasels, like good ways to weasel out of it. But I keep hearing these different ways that people are weaseling out of this stuff. And when it comes to this guy, though, I've heard very little. I don't know if you've heard any conservative arguments for why he needs to be there, other than some other child died. But I haven't really seen anything compelling.
I don't think there are good weasels here, unfortunately, because the issue is that the Trump admin, and Boasberg brought this up, the Trump admin has just been so openly defiant of the courts in a braggadocious type way. I think they've put themselves into an unwinnable position because of how disgusting they've been with everything. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see as the days go on. I feel like they foreclosed all of their own ways to avoid responsibility here just because of how insane they've been with everything.
Yeah. Well, then, I think at this point, it's like, as you said, they're so just blatantly violating the court orders and things like that, that it's just, it all seems kind of just window dressing for them, or not even window dressing, just kind of an act, a play for them to be doing while they just do whatever they want.
Yeah, which is what it was the entire time for this court case, right? Oh no, we can't show you anything because it's top secret. Meanwhile, they're posting like epic Twitter videos and shit, showing everything that's going on. And again, Boasberg is about all of this stuff. Like, this is all just a joke to them. They've treated it as a joke. Oh God, when Marco Rubio fucking retweeted the President Bukaki, who was making fun of the fact that they justified the court order, like, holy fuck, like, it's really hard. Yeah, you're closing off so many potential avenues of defense here. So no, but
well, yeah. So that leads me into, I was speaking with someone about kind of looking ahead, and they're like, well, midterms are coming, and I'm trying not to be jaded, and yes, midterms are coming, and maybe we'll survive to get there and then be able to do something about all of this. But I feel like that is a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like false hope to me, because if, let's say we have a blue wave, we take the Senate and the House, and let's say we get 67% of both, let's say we have a veto-proof Congress, I don't see how, I think the best that happens there is we get an impeachment, but then what happens is that doesn't mean Donald Trump is removed from office. It means that the army now has to remove Donald Trump, because he's not going to leave just because he's impeached. I don't know. Do you think if he got impeached by an overwhelming Democrat Congress, he would actually leave office?
I don't know, but we have to start forcing these matters. It can't just be like, we don't think anything will happen. So, yeah.
This is not this is not an excuse not to do anything. It's just, it feels to me like a really, like, I don't feel a lot of relief in thinking that, like, oh, look, we keep stacking the deck against him. Eventually, he'll get scared and back down, because...
No, I think the backing down is not going to happen. He has to be shown. Yeah, remember, people respond predictably to predictable incentives, right? If he thinks he can get away with it, he will. And so far, he has. Like, everything that Trump is doing so far is fairly rational, because he's never been held to account for anything. So why wouldn't he continue to do all the same unhinged shit? But if he starts to be held accountable for stuff, and he realizes, oh, shit, there are punishments for doing this, then he'll stop doing those things. But until then, he'll just continue on, I would imagine, or carry on, as he should.
Right. And you saw I think you covered the stuff about the bond market and how it made him back off from the tariffs or whatever.
For sure, yeah.
Do you think there's there's anything that, like, Americans or anybody against Donald Trump, is there any kind of, like, vulnerability like that you could see for Trump that could be used against him? Because I agree with you. Escalation needs to keep happening. I don't mean escalation and violence. I mean, we just need to always make sure we are doing what we can to prevent
everybody's fighting everywhere. Yeah.
Right. But, at the same time, if Americans collectively had $3 trillion in bonds and we could hold that over Trump's head, maybe we wouldn't have to do those escalations. Do you see any kind of, like... I
mean, theoretically, aren't Americans the largest bondholder? I mean, could Americans start dumping their bonds? That's kind of weird, though, because you're, like, destroying your own economy. But I mean, if it's to force Trump to make better decisions, I don't even know how that would work in theory. So,
yeah, I certainly don't know how that shit works. But not saying bonds themselves. I mean, like, when I think about it, I feel like that's kind of what I'm saying with the midterms thing that feels scary. Is it's like Yeah, I mean, I understand all the processes and how we do these things and how we fight against him, but I don't, as you say, there is a rational through line, and Trump's rational through line doesn't include anything related to the American political process. It doesn't have anything to do with public opinion, really. I keep hearing people say, "Oh, well, he loves attention, blah blah blah, all that stuff." But you've seen the press conferences. Everybody in that room is on their knees in front of him,
Yeah.
ready to go. So what does he care about that stuff? And so I keep hearing people claim that there's these motivations for Donald Trump, and I don't. It's hard for me, I guess, other than the bond market now, it's hard for me to identify what those are, other than staying the president and things like that. So I didn't know if you had identified anything like that or had given it any thought.
I mean, if it gets to the point to where there's like huge electoral consequence, but I mean, like at this point, we're looking for an easy out for a guy that is. The problem is, everybody assumes that history can only go one way, and there are a lot of things that we've taken for granted as Americans. And what we're doing is you're kind of asking, like, imagine it's like 1938 Germany, and you're like, okay, well, Hitler, geez, okay, what's the easy way to get rid of this guy without some kind of confrontation? It's probably not at that point, right? And it's the same thing with Trump. Trump has shown himself to have a wanton disrespect for the law. He's put people around him that have an utter and complete and total disrespect for the law and due process and everything else. So there is not going to be an easy way to do it now. And he has the popular support, or he had, of half the American citizenry. There's not going to be an easy way out. There shouldn't be. It's a democracy. And this is what over half the people in this country voted for. He won the Electoral College in all 7 swing states. So there is no easy way out of this. And there shouldn't be. There can't be. Well, if there was an easy way out of it, then, I mean, what would that mean for any other democratically elected leader? Like, it's going to be probably difficult, and everybody has to be fighting like on all fronts in order to make it happen.
Well, yeah, respectfully, I don't think what I'm asking for is an easy way out. I mean, I think the idea that we would have a leader of our nation that cares more than just his own personal wealth and power. You know, if Joe Biden, I think Joe Biden had cares and desires for things that could then be used, whether or not, like, used to prevent him from acting like an outright dictator, right? Like,
yeah, but Biden wasn't a dictator,
that.
and we didn't vote for Biden to be a dictator.
Sure.
Trump's fan base, Trump's cult did vote for him to be a dictator to some extent. They just were hoping he would be the benevolent dictator, right?
Right. Yeah, that's fair. And that's fair. Okay, I hear you. Hey, as far as then, when you look at you talked about these electoral wins before, and like everybody was crowing about the Wisconsin Supreme Court and things like that. I mean, as you say, like I've heard people say, like, oh, well, once we see these special elections, and once we see those things start turning, right? Do you think there's people within his administration? Because I can see Trump holding strong, but do you see like Republicans in Congress, or even people just like in state governments, things like that? Do you see any kind of like possibility of like those people starting to turn on him? I saw Cruz speak out against the tariffs,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
But
well, because remember, there's different incentives for these guys. They want to be elected, right? They have to. That's what a politician wants, and they should. We want politicians to want to be elected. It means they're trying to serve the public interest to some extent. If it's going to be the case that Donald Trump is embarking on a path that's going to lead to the destruction of the electorability of all these Republicans, then eventually they will start to jump ship. So that's what we have to hope, is that there's enough pressure. Like, the only thing that Trump is scared of is impeachment. That's it. That's the only thing that Trump is afraid of. And so the only way to impeach him is to get impeachable majorities in Congress. And so then the way through that is at the midterms. I don't think we could get there in the midterms, not because we have enough Democrats, but because we have enough Republicans who feel like their seats are going to be threatened. I think that Trump is going to have a huge issue also after the midterms, in that, remember, Trump is here for Trump and he's here for his cult. He doesn't care about America, and he definitely doesn't care about the Republican Party. And so Republicans in the House and Senate are going to have to look at him, because Trump doesn't give a fuck what he does that hurts the Republicans or the Republican Party in the future. He just cares about his own whatever ego. So I think Republicans will weigh that as well. So, yeah.
Sure, but I think two things on that. I think, one, whenever we talked in the past, you asked me, like, what are 3 things that Trump has done that scared you the most? And my number one was his replacement of the heads of the military. And from the very little that I've read on it, it seems like there's a lot of officers and a lot of people within the military that support Trump in a lot of things. I mean, there was a military officer that was fired from his post in Greenland, or removed from his post in Greenland, because he wrote a personal email that was disparaging against J.D. Vance, right? And And I agree with you that an impeachment that is successful is the most scary thing to Trump. But again, if we impeach him and then he says, I'm not leaving, what's the
then you hope that then it's time for the military to step up. That's the next thing, right? It has to be a coup.
But if all of the military likes Donald Trump and is happy with Donald Trump and he keeps them happy, right? Now we're in another, and it's, again, I'm not saying that's not the reason not to do it. I'm just saying.
Well, then at that point, then you're at. I mean, it's not very obvious. The answers suck, but it's like pretty easy. Then at that point, then it's a revolution, basically, right? Then you have to have a people's coup, right? The U.S. citizens then have to stand up and take action.
Sure. And then whenever you look at, say, a successful impeachment, though, I think you would agree that J.D. Vance is no consolation to removing Donald Trump. And
they would both have to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it feels like, but I feel like J.D. Vance is totally enough of a scumbag piece of shit to say, oh, look, Donald Trump got out. Yeah, he did a lot of bad stuff. I will do just enough to get the Republicans to not.
Yeah, Vance is scary because Vance is not a total fucking retard, because Vance is like will do things that are electorally possible. But I mean, that's a bridge you cross when you come to it. It sucks, but I think that I think the Republicans would support Vance after an impeachment of Donald Trump, probably.
Sure.
So.
I mean, I think that Vance is smart enough, and if he is put into power, because he'll never get elected there, if he gets put into power, to me it seems like he is a person that's smart enough to be the benevolent dictator that Republicans wanted, and make sure to protect that kind of both the political base and the public sentiment from Republicans. So like, I would be surprised if he was going to then go in and do all these tariff schemes, right? But I would not be surprised if he maintained this insane deportation policy that they're doing, right? Like I could see on the one side keeping them in his pocket and then hurting the people that they want him to hurt. And so that's kind of a, how hard would it be for, that's why if we get that 67% in the Congress, it makes a lot of sense that we could get both of them out. But I would be surprised if we could get Republicans on board with Trump and Vance.
Yeah, but this is like way down the line of like things to worry about, I think. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's all a fight. It's a lot of damage to undo. So. Yeah.
Hey, do you mind if I ask you kind of a bit of a meta question about your streaming stuff?
Yeah. What about it?
I heard you talking the other day. You were like, "Oh, the way that I do arguments is I do kind of you do thesis in your supporting paragraphs, right? Kind of the classic thing like that." Is that how you?
Wait, did I say that?
You really? Yeah, you said something along those lines. I don't know if it was a general thing or if
I feel like I was talking
in argument.
Yeah, I think I was talking in particular about the little op-ed thing that I'd written, I think. Because real life conversation is very rarely structured that elegantly or whatever. But
fair. But whenever you go into at least debates, let's say you go into like you're about to debate somebody on stream or on a show or something, and you know what the topic's going to be. Do you structure your arguments like formally, or do you just kind of get your points and then go in?
I've typically debated it so much that it'll be some semi-formal in my head. If there's like a debate I'm actually preparing for, I'll write it down and actually, yeah, for sure.
Okay, because I'm going to glaze you for a second here. There was one debate I saw you do. I believe it was against the guy that used to be called Big Papa Fascist. What's his name?
Oh, Andrew Wilson or whatever.
Yeah, I believe you debated him on whether or not January 6th was a insurrection. And you went into that debate, and it was funny because you employed an argument structure that is kind of the standard in the legal community. Like everybody in the legal community writes this way and forms their arguments this way, and you did it, and you brought it in there. And that debate, a lot of people said was really boring, or they said that you kind of didn't really argue because you wouldn't get off these certain points. But when you did it, it was really effective. And it's been interesting talking to you and kind of this less formal discussion or argument style, because as an attorney, it's pretty rare to kind of have this direct back and forth. But I saw it be effective there. And so I was wondering, like, do you understand the structure that you used there? Like, what that's called and everything?
I have no idea what it's called, but I read a decent amount for that debate, including like papers by legal scholars. So it wouldn't surprise me if the structure ended up carrying over to my argument.
Okay, because I feel like it would serve you a lot in a lot of your debates, especially whenever I see you trying, like, you don't do whataboutisms necessarily, but you certainly like point out people's hypocrisy a lot, right? So the Signal Gate thing was a huge one, where you're like, you know, the clear comparison, Hillary's emails,
Sure.
right? And like, let's say you and I were in a debate about those, like Signal Gate, and you wanted to point out to me, hey, you know, this is clearly like similar to Hillary's emails. Y'all treated it that way worse than this. You're obviously sweeping for the Signal Gate thing. You know, why are you doing it that way? And I feel like a lot of the times when I see that, to me, it feels frustrating because it feels like you're either shortchanging the argument or you're kind of giving them a small out there that I don't think you have to give them. And so like in the legal world, you do something called an IRAC, which is like, you spot the issue, you state the rule, you analyze the facts on the rule, and you state a conclusion, which is what you did in that January 6th debate. You said, hey, issue, I think that this
I think the reason
right?
why I had that approach was especially because I'd read there's like a 130-page paper by like Paulson and Baud, I think, are the two legal scholars that wrote on that case, and they had just a very clear way to set out like this is, you know, the how you define what an insurrection is, and then they go through and they test like point by point by point. So I only tried to make that argument. Also because if I'm going to make a legal argument, I'm going to be very careful about hypotheticals, although I don't have to because it's the debate world and nobody knows anything about law. But in the real world, law is complicated, and I'm not going to pretend that because I understand one particular statute and the particular elements of that particular statute and the way that it applies to a particular situation because I've read legal scholars talk about it, I'm not going to assume that, oh, well, I'm sure this thing would apply to everything else. So it constrains my ability to use hypotheticals there because I want to be careful not to stray into uncharted legal territory because I'm not a legal professional. I don't have the background to do it. So I end up being like very much more razor focused on the argument there, if that makes sense. Wait, hello? Testing?
Hello?
Oh, hi. Oh, you got cut off.
You still here?
Yep.
Sorry. One of the things you get warned about when you go into law school is that if you're married, you're going to get a divorce. If you're in a relationship, you're going to break up. Because a big thing about law school is it really changes the way that your brain like works, because you get you get the IRAC method so beaten into you.
Wait, what is
that
IRAC
every
method? What does that
conversation-
stand for? Just curious, sorry. The letters?
Issue, rule, analysis, conclusion.
Oh, okay.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah, those are your 4 parts of the argument or the legal document you're writing or essay or something. And so what'll happen is people that go to law school many times will all of a sudden, that's kind of just how their brain gets rewired, and I suffer from this. And anytime you get into an argument with anybody, it turns into that. And so like let's say it's the Signal Gate thing, right? And I'm saying I think Signal Gate was a problem. All right. And then you say, well, I don't think it's a problem. You say, okay, you don't think it's a problem. All right. So we need to figure out if it's a problem. Okay. Why is it not a problem to you that these secrets got out? Right. And you might tell me that your reasons why, and they might be bullshit. Right. And I go, okay, great. That's why. And I go, okay, applying those facts to Signal Gate, you're right. That doesn't make sense. Now, let me take your rule and I'm going to apply it to the Hillary Clinton thing. Now, whenever I look at Hillary Clinton, it fits that rule perfectly. So there shouldn't have been any issue with that. Right.
Sure.
And what they might say is whataboutism, blah, 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 still. And they might do that, and they're bad faith, and fuck them. But also what it might do...
I wouldn't say they're bad
them
faith,
turn
but I
around.
understand what you mean there, yeah. It's not a good argument, yeah.
But then what it might do is it makes them turn around and go, well, actually, the rule wasn't complete.
Sure.
And they may give it to you. And I think you've spoken to this in the sense where you are arguing with someone, and you kind of are trying to push through their argument and go, I'm trying to figure out what you're actually saying. Because you're giving me an argument that I know you don't believe in. And I want you to tell me what you really think. And whenever you use, for us in the legal world at least, the IRAC method is really, really good at pushing through that. And so the reason you usually get divorced is because all of a sudden, when you're talking with your spouse, you're much, much better at arguing, and it's much harder for them to talk to you and win arguments with you, and people get divorced. And like, it's very
Okay.
true.
I would say it's probably not appropriate to apply that method there, but okay.
No, but you can't like genuinely, it is very hard not to do it once you go through law school. It's just it really does rewire your brain that way.
I think that I feel like the issue that you run into there, the problem is that in law school or as a lawyer, the way that it works, and it should work this way, is as a litigant, you're adversarial to the other party. So you should be trying to figure out an argument they're using, seeing if it's applied consistently. And then if it's not, then you're right, principled explosion, whatever, you're tearing down their argument through the inconsistencies. But I mean, I would argue that in a familial setting or in a husband-wife setting, you should be working in more of a kind of mediator role where you're trying to reconcile both sides. So that's why when I'm arguing with people and I'll say, like, I know you don't believe in this rule, I'm not necessarily looking to destroy their argument. I am, but first I want to find out what is the actual argument. Because what happens is when people say they don't like a thing, they'll not like it for some intuitive reason that they don't fully understand. And then when you ask for the rule, they'll just print a rule immediately, but they haven't thought through it all because that's not how they got to their conclusion before. So they'll say like, oh, Hillary's email was bad because I think anybody could gain access to classified information. And that's not a good thing. And it's like, okay, well, let's apply this rule to Signalgate. And it doesn't work. And then they go back and they start adding more rules. It's not that they were necessarily bad faith. I'm being kind of charitable here, but it's not that they were necessarily bad faith. It's that they didn't actually have a rule before. They had an intuition. And when you asked them for the rule, they tried to invent one to explain their intuition, but they don't even fully realize that that's what's happening. So I would argue, like in the case of a relationship, what you should be doing is instead of saying like, oh, well, you didn't like that I, didn't take the trash out tonight. What about 2 days ago when you didn't do the dishes even though you agreed to, right? You can do that, but this is like a plaintiff-defendant thing. And remember, the whole point in a court case is to win, right? You're not trying to come to some mutual agreement. You're not arbitrating or mediating. You're just trying to defeat the other person. So like, you should probably try to understand like, okay, well, why does a person think this? And then let's see if we resolve the issue, right?
Yeah, sure. No, don't worry. You don't need to. I appreciate it, but you don't need to go to relationship advice mode for me.
Oh,
but
well, I say that actually because I had to think about this for a while. Because sometimes I will get that is an issue for me where I'll get into like hyper debate mode for. I used to do this a lot more for relationship stuff, and I have to like chill out. It's like, okay, well, hold on. What are we actually talking about here? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I totally understand. It's as you get older, it's a little easier. That helps too. But well, what I'd say is whenever you're talking about the person that has the intuition and they don't have the rule made, right? I think one thing that is very similar about court and about your debates that I see is that you don't care what the other side actually believes at the end of the day. I don't care if at the end of the case, the defendant agrees with me. I care if my audience, the jury, agrees with me, right? And so the reason why we employ the IRAC method is one, to show that the other side isn't trustworthy in what they say or in their arguments. And two, to show that I'm very smart and I do know what I'm talking about and I am able to make these smart arguments, so they trust me more. And then whenever I see you doing it, right? So, and then in number three, it's that making an ordered argument that they can follow, especially one that they can reach the conclusion themselves, that's the best, but that they can follow and then reach the same conclusion that this person is making a bad argument. Is very convincing, right? And that's very important. So like what I'm saying is like, for me, whenever I see you say like, and I don't think that you do this, I'm not like accusing you of being like, of doing this all the time and it's so bad, but like,
yeah, I understand.
If you were in a Signalgate fight and you said, well, this is like Hillary's emails, right? And I think it's very easy for any audience to look at that and go, this guy's really defensive and is just trying to either change the subject, what about and blah, 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 right? But if you do this IRAC method that I'm talking about, it really puts a lot of the onus on them, and it really shows their inability to kind of reach a satisfying conclusion with a satisfying rule. And so then, even if their audience thinks that you're doing whataboutism, even if they think you're just some stupid blue-haired liberal, the theory, at least I guess, is that they'll say, okay, that all might be true, but my guy really doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, right? And this guy, even if I agree with what he's saying, he's not telling me why I should agree with him. And I think that there's a good amount of the online audience that doesn't care at all, and they're just here to agree with the side that they want. But I think I've heard you talk about how you're saying, you're just trying to convince, a sliver of their audience or a part of their audience, or show them that, hey, this isn't quite right. And just my 2 cents on kind of when you kind of get into those situations, how that one thing you can kind of slow it down, extract it out, and really put it on them to really stand in their business. Now, to be fair, and I could be totally off base on this because the blood sports style fighting that y'all do is pretty rare in the legal community. As much as people talk about lawyers being assholes and fighting and stuff like that, we always have a mediator. We always have someone that can come in and be the adult and settle it, right? So it's not it's not entirely fair for me to come at you like this in this way, because it's like, I don't know what it's like to be in a room where you're dealing with this shit, and I can't just turn and look at a judge and get them to answer or get them to fuck off.
Sure, because technically a debater is committing that the foul of a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for both a lawyer and a client or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and technically when you're
yeah.
debating, it's probably a lot easier to debate other ideas because I'm getting a collection of facts and then I'm applying the rule set, and it's very easy to do that dispassionately because it's not my case. I'm just representing somebody, you know?
Yeah. And also, I mean, we get to, you know, all the evidentiary rules. It's so funny because, like, watching your debates can be like, sometimes I have to turn them off because it's just like, why the fuck are any of you guys even talking about this?
Sure.
You don't even know if it's true, or like arguments over like fact issues.
Yeah, those are always the most frustrating. Like, just look this up. Why are we even debating this? Like, if we have a disagreement on fact here, this is Googleable. Yeah, why does,
Right. So, yeah, just something I noticed. But yeah, are you? Oh, actually, I want to ask. You'll let us know if you're going to write another article.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Thanks for all the Gab and everything like that.
Yeah.
You have a good rest of your day.
Have a good one. Be careful.